Most people think these 1960s stockpile secrets were just desperate measures for a time of scarcity. In fact, many of them were actually discouraged or even banned by modern food standards for decades. But today, top scientists are uncovering the genius chemistry behind these survival foods, proving they are actually healthier and more shelf-stable than anything you'll find in a grocery store today. Today, we're diving into the 25 banned Chinese stockpile foods that require zero electricity, never expire, and might just be the ultimate survival secret your grandma never told you. And wait until you see number one. It's a protein source so controversial it was hidden for generations, yet it holds the key to long-term heart health. Number 25. Century eggs, also called pidan. These were flagged by Western food authorities for decades because the traditional curing process used a clay mixture that historically included small amounts of lead compounds. Modern versions use lead-free clay made from wood ash, quicklime, salt, and rice husks packed around raw duck or chicken eggs. You bury them or seal them in that mixture for about 100 days. The alkaline environment raises the pH inside the egg to around 9 or 10, which denatures the protein into a gel and completely eliminates bacterial growth. No refrigeration needed. What scientists now recognize is that this process creates amino acids, specifically breaking proteins into more digestible forms. The result is a shelf-stable, high-protein food that keeps for months. For Americans, you can make a simplified version using food-grade lime paste, salt, and ash, coating each egg and sealing it in a jar. The alkaline cure does all the work. Number 24. Bird's nest, known as yanwo. This ingredient has been restricted or heavily regulated at various border crossings, including U.S. Customs, due to concerns over avian flu contamination from raw imports. What you are dealing with is the dried saliva nest of swiftlets. Once cleaned and soaked in water for several hours, it dissolves into fine strands rich in glycoproteins. Scientists have confirmed that these glycoproteins contain compounds that may support respiratory mucosa and immune function. In 1960s China, families who could access it stored it dry for years. To use it, soak a small piece in cold water overnight, rinse thoroughly, then simmer gently in a light broth or with rock sugar for about 30 minutes. The protein content is moderate, but the bioactive compounds are what make it a survival-tier stockpile item for lung health. Number 23. Fermented tofu called furu. Western import controls have flagged this repeatedly as a product with uncontrolled fermentation, essentially treating it as potentially hazardous. But here is the science. Furu is made by taking firm tofu, allowing it to develop a mold culture, specifically from controlled mucor molds, then submerging it in a brine of salt, rice wine, and spices in a sealed ceramic jar. The fermentation takes roughly 1 to 3 months. What you get is a soft, intensely flavored protein block with a shelf life that outperforms canned meat. The salt and alcohol create a preservation environment hostile to harmful bacteria, while the beneficial mold breaks down proteins into highly bioavailable forms. Americans can make this at home using a starter culture or allowing natural mold development in a cool, dry environment before brining. Number 22. Traditional layered rendering called GU. The low-fat movement of the 1970s and 80s essentially made lard the villain of American kitchens. In 1960s China, rendering and storing lard was a fundamental preservation skill. You take pork fat, preferably leaf fat from around the kidneys, cut it small, place it in a heavy pot with a small amount of water, and render it slowly over low heat until all water evaporates and only golden fat remains. You strain it into a ceramic jar and seal it. Stored this way without refrigeration, properly rendered lard lasts 6 months to a year. Scientists now recognize that lard contains significant vitamin D, vitamin B12, and monounsaturated fats. It also enables the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K from other foods. In a no-refrigeration survival scenario, it is one of the most calorie-dense, nutrient-enabling fats you can stockpile. Number 21. Aged mandarin peel called chenpi. Customs and agricultural authorities have flagged dried citrus imports due to pest and mold concerns, making some aged peels technically restricted. Here's why that restriction makes zero sense nutritionally. Chen pea is made by drying mandarin peel and aging it, sometimes for decades. The older the peel, the higher the concentration of flavonoids, particularly hesperidin and naringenin, compounds linked to respiratory health and anti-inflammatory function. To make it, peel mandarin oranges, allow them to air dry completely in a well-ventilated area away from moisture, and store in a paper bag or loosely sealed ceramic container. Properly dried Chen pea from 1960s households was worth considerable money because a 20 to 60-year-old peel was considered medicinal. For your stockpile, even 3 to 5-year-old Chen pea added to soups and teas provides meaningful respiratory support. Number 20. Mung bean vermicelli as a shark fin alternative. Original shark fin has been banned or restricted in many U.S. states and internationally due to conservation concerns. What 1960s Chinese cooks discovered is that mung bean vermicelli, soaked and cooked in a rich collagen broth, replicates the slippery cartilaginous texture of shark fin almost exactly. Soak the dried noodles in cold water for 20 minutes, then simmer them in bone broth for 10 minutes. The starch gelatinizes around the strands, creating that signature texture. This is a genius stockpile hack because dry mung bean vermicelli stores for 2 to 3 years in a sealed container and costs almost nothing. The collagen from the broth provides the same functional nutrition people sought from shark fin in the first place. Number 19. Unpasteurized soy milk. In the 1960s, fresh soy milk was made by soaking dried soybeans overnight, grinding them with water, straining through cloth, and heating but not boiling to kill the bean's natural trypsin inhibitors without destroying heat-sensitive enzymes and isoflavones. Modern boxed soy milk is ultra-pasteurized, which extends shelf life but reduces the bioavailability of several compounds. Scientists studying traditional preparation methods have found that the 1960s technique preserves more active isoflavones and certain BI vitamins. For Americans making this at home, soak 1 cup of soybeans overnight, blend with 4 cups of water, strain through cheesecloth, and heat the liquid to around 160 degrees Fahrenheit, holding it there for 15 minutes rather than bringing it to a full boil. Consume fresh or store refrigerated for up to 3 days. Number 18. Salted duck eggs, called xiandan. These were sometimes restricted in import due to undeclared preservative levels in the salt brine. The process is beautifully simple. Pack raw duck eggs entirely in a mixture of fine salt and a small amount of water, or alternatively, submerge them in a saturated saltwater brine in a sealed jar. Leave them for 30 to 40 days. The salt penetrates the shell and membrane, drawing moisture out and creating an environment where nothing harmful can survive. The yolk becomes firm, oily, and rich, while the white turns translucent. The result is an egg that is stable for months without any refrigeration. Nutritionally, the yolk retains high levels of omega-3 fatty acids, zinc, and selenium. For a survival pantry, a batch of 12 salted duck eggs costs almost nothing and provides months of reliable protein. Number 17. Bamboo shoots with aku removal. Raw bamboo shoots contain cyanogenic glycosides, compounds that can cause poisoning, which is why they were sometimes discouraged in Western settings without proper preparation. The 1960s solution was rice water soaking. Slice fresh bamboo shoots thin, boil them in the water left over from rinsing rice for about 20 minutes, then drain and rinse thoroughly. Repeat this process twice. The starch in the rice water binds to and neutralizes the bitter compounds, while the repeated boiling drives off the volatile cyanide components. What remains is a fiber-rich, low-calorie vegetable that stores well when pickled in salt brine. As a stockpile item, dried or salt-pickled bamboo shoots last a year or more and provide prebiotic fiber that supports gut health during periods of dietary stress. Number 16. Pomelo rind as protein absorber. This technique was considered extreme frugality, essentially peasant cooking that modern recipes discarded. The thick white pith of pomelo rind is spongy and nearly tasteless on its own. In 1960s households, it was blanched twice to remove bitterness, then squeezed dry and added to braised meat dishes. The pith acts like a sponge, absorbing the fat, protein, and flavor from the meat, effectively doubling the volume and caloric content of the dish without adding any cost. To use it, blanch the white pith 3 times, refreshing the water each time, squeeze firmly, then braise it alongside any fatty meat. It absorbs the cooking liquid entirely. This is not just frugality, it is a legitimate technique for stretching protein in a resource-limited environment. Number 15. Bitter melon for blood sugar management. Often rejected by Western eaters for its intense bitterness, bitter melon or kugua contains compounds including carotene and polypeptide P that research has shown mimic insulin activity in cells. In 1960s China, it was consumed regularly in stir-fries and teas as a natural management tool for blood sugar, long before anyone in the West understood why it worked. To reduce bitterness for palatability, slice it thin, salt generously, let it sit for 15 minutes, then rinse and squeeze out the liquid. Stir-fry quickly on high heat. The active compounds survive moderate cooking. For Americans managing blood sugar naturally or stockpiling functional foods, dried bitter melon is available and can be reconstituted or brewed as tea. Number 14. Goji berries in bulk storage. Called wolfberries in the West, these were considered weeds or ornamental plants in many regions and largely ignored until recent decades. In 1960s, Chinese households, dried goji berries were stored in large quantities as a year-round medicinal food. They contain zeaxanthin and lutein, compounds that protect against macular degeneration, as well as polysaccharides linked to immune modulation. To store them optimally, keep dried goji berries in a sealed glass jar away from light and moisture. They last 2 or more years stored this way. Add them to rice porridge, broths, or steep them in hot water as tea. For bulk stockpiling, buying directly from Asian grocery suppliers rather than trendy health food stores reduces cost dramatically. Number 13. Black garlic fermentation. Standard garlic was always a pantry staple, but black garlic requires a process that looks from the outside like neglect or spoilage. You place whole, unpeeled garlic bulbs in a rice cooker set to the keep warm function, or in any device maintaining a steady temperature of around 140 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit, and leave them completely undisturbed for 40 days. The Maillard reaction gradually transforms the cloves, turning them black and sweet while dramatically increasing the concentration of S-allylcysteine, a compound linked to cardiovascular protection. The resulting black garlic has roughly double the antioxidant content of raw garlic and a mellow molasses-like flavor. It stores at room temperature for months once made and provides heart health support that regular garlic cannot match at the same level. Number 12. Rice water as thickener and nutrition source. Modern food hygiene culture often treats leftover cooking water as waste. In 1960s, Chinese kitchens, the water from the first rinse of uncooked rice was set aside and used as a soup base and thickener. This water contains surface starch, B vitamins, and minerals. It naturally thickens when simmered, creating a light, nutritious broth from nothing. The water used to cook rice also holds significant amounts of B vitamins leached from the grain during cooking. To use it, simply reserve your rinsing water and cooking water separately. Simmer either with vegetables or a small amount of meat, and you have an inexpensive, nutritious broth base that costs you absolutely nothing. Number 11. River foraging and hairy crab knowledge. The Chinese mitten crab has been classified as an invasive species in many Western waterways, including parts of the U.S., making commercial harvest in those areas illegal. However, understanding how river foraging for high-protein shellfish worked in 1960s, China teaches a critical survival skill. Any wild-caught freshwater crab must be thoroughly cooked to an internal temperature above 160 degrees Fahrenheit to eliminate parasites, steam or boil for at least 20 minutes. The protein yield per crab is significant, and the knowledge of how to identify, clean, and safely prepare them is a genuine survival asset regardless of the specific species available in your local environment. Number 10. Snow fungus, called yinner. This white frilly mushroom was called the peasant's bird's nest because it contains similar polysaccharide compounds at a fraction of the cost and is completely shelf-stable when dried. Dried snow fungus lasts 2 or more years, sealed in a cool, dry location. To use it, soak in cold water for at least 2 hours until fully expanded. Trim the hard yellow base, then simmer in water with jujube dates and rock sugar for 45 minutes to create a collagen-rich, skin-supporting dessert soup. Scientists have confirmed that snow fungus polysaccharides support moisture retention in tissues and show immune-modulating properties. For stockpiling, the cost is minimal and the nutritional payoff relative to weight is exceptional. Number 9. Wind-dried meats called larue. Traditional air drying of pork and other meats bypasses modern temperature control requirements that food safety regulations now mandate. In 1960s, China, meats were salted heavily, sometimes smoked briefly, then hung in well-ventilated, cool, shaded locations during winter months for 4 to 6 weeks. The salt draws out moisture to the point where harmful bacterial growth cannot occur. The key variables are temperature below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, constant airflow, and an initial salt ratio of no less than 3% of the meat's weight. Properly dried larue is shelf-stable for up to a year without refrigeration. The concentrated flavor also makes small quantities go further in cooking, which is a critical benefit in a resource-limited scenario. Number 8. Mushroom soaking water. Standard practice in modern Western kitchens is to discard the brown water left after soaking dried mushrooms. This is one of the most wasteful mistakes in cooking. That liquid contains glutamates responsible for umami flavor, vitamin D precursors released from the dried fungal tissue, and various B vitamins. In 1960s, Chinese households that soaking water was filtered through a cloth to remove grit and added directly to every soup and stir-fry sauce. Always allow it to settle for 5 minutes, pour off the clear upper portion, and discard only the last bit where sediment collects. The flavor enhancement and nutritional addition are completely free. Number 7. Preserved mustard greens called maigan kai. This is one of the most overlooked long-term storage vegetables in existence. Fresh mustard greens are salted, sun-dried, and packed tightly into sealed ceramic jars. The lacto-fermentation that follows over several weeks produces a deeply savory, umami-rich preserved vegetable that lasts for a year or more. To make it, wash mustard greens thoroughly, allow them to wilt in the sun for 2 days, salt generously using roughly 10% of the vegetable weight, pack tightly into jars, seal and store in a cool location. The result pairs with rice and fatty meats to create calorie-dense, satisfying meals from essentially nothing. For stockpiling, they provide probiotics, vitamin K, and significant minerals. Number 6. Rice vinegar as a preservation agent. Adding 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar to freshly cooked rice and mixing well before serving or storing lowers the pH of the rice enough to significantly slow bacterial growth. In 1960s Chinese households before widespread refrigeration, this was standard practice. The acidity does not change the taste noticeably, but creates a hostile environment for Bacillus cereus, the bacterium responsible for most rice food poisoning cases. For Americans, this works identically with any rice. Cool the vinegar-seasoned rice uncovered before storing, and it remains safe at room temperature for several hours longer than untreated rice. Number 5. Crushed eggshells in broth. Modern kitchens discard eggshells completely. In 1960s China, shells were rinsed, dried, crushed finely, and added directly to simmering bone broth. Eggshells are approximately 95% calcium carbonate. When simmered in an acidic broth, particularly one made with rice vinegar or tomato, the calcium leaches out and becomes bioavailable. This was a zero-waste calcium source during rationing periods. For Americans, rinse shells thoroughly, bake at 300 degrees for 10 minutes to sterilize, crush to a powder, and add half a teaspoon per pot of broth. The calcium content added per serving becomes meaningful, especially in diets otherwise low in dairy. Number 4. Bone marrow gelatin storage. After extracting marrow from bones and making broth, 1960s Chinese households collected the gelatinous broth and allowed it to set into a solid semi-transparent block when cooled. This stored concentrated calories, collagen, gelatin, and fat-soluble vitamins in a compact form. Properly made and sealed, this gelatin block keeps without refrigeration for several days and can be remelted for immediate nutrition. In a survival scenario, knowing how to concentrate broth into a portable, calorie-dense block by simmering it down and allowing it to set is an invaluable skill. Number 3. Silkworm pupae, called zaocon. These were a common protein snack in 1960s China, available seasonally as a byproduct of silk production. Various Western countries, including the United States, have had restrictions on importing certain insect food products due to agricultural and customs regulations. The science now catching up confirms that silkworm pupae contain roughly 50% protein by dry weight along with significant omega-3 fatty acids and zinc. To prepare them safely, they must be boiled for at least 10 minutes, then they can be stir-fried with garlic and salt. For Americans, they are increasingly available through specialty suppliers as food safety recognition catches up with the science. Number 2. Aged rice, called chenmi. Modern grocery stores discard rice older than its sell-by date. In 1960s China, aged rice was deliberately sought for making congee and survival porridge because it absorbs far more water during cooking than fresh rice, stretching the same quantity into a much larger, more filling meal. Aged rice also has a lower glycemic response than fresh rice because the starch structure changes during aging. To use old rice effectively, increase your water ratio to at least 1:10 for congee, cook low and slow for 45 minutes to an hour, and season with preserved vegetables, eggs, or broth. The result is a voluminous, filling meal from a small amount of grain. And number 1, hand-pressed peanut oil. Modern commercial peanut oil is extracted using hexane, a petroleum-derived chemical solvent, which is then supposedly removed from the final product. In 1960s Chinese households, peanuts were dry roasted, ground into a paste, and pressed manually through cloth to extract pure oil using nothing but mechanical pressure and heat from the roasting process. This method preserves the full vitamin E content and naturally occurring antioxidants that hexane extraction degrades. To do this at home, roast raw peanuts until fragrant, grind them in a food processor to a smooth paste, place the paste in cheesecloth, and press firmly over a bowl. The oil that runs out is pure, hexane-free, and extraordinarily flavorful. For anyone serious about clean long-term food storage and chemical-free nutrition, this single technique might be the most important on this entire list. Every item from number 25 down to number 1 was developed out of necessity, refined over generations, and then quietly dismissed by a modern food system that prioritized shelf appearance and industrial efficiency over actual nutritional wisdom. These are not folk remedies. They are the validated solutions of people who had no margin for error and got it right. If you want to build a real survival pantry that works, these 25 methods are your starting point. Drop in the comments which one you are trying first.